So here is my full color underpainting. I did this in one layer over a couple of days. So now I'm going to start on some veiling and tints. And I am going to start on the background, I think. So I'm going to darken that up. Right now the figure and the background are kind of in the same value scale. So I really want to set the background back so that my figure will pop forward. So I'm going to darken most of this, maybe leave some highlights up at the top to kind of give a down effect with the lighting, but most of this I'm going to get darker. So that's what I'm going to do today in this video. Alright, so I am using a product called Liquid, which is it's a very fatty oil, but it dries really quickly. You can do veils and tints with any kind of fatty medium, like linseed oil or walnut oil or lots of stuff, but I like Liquid because I don't want to wait months between applications. If you want to do something where you need it to stay wet for a long period of time to do some like really intricate work or something, then walnut oil or linseed oil might be a good option for you. I do stand oil as well. But for this application, I think Liquid will be the best option for me. So I'm just kind of gathering that on. Now for a tint, since the difference between a tint and a glaze is that a glaze you are focusing on hue, whereas on a tint your focus is on value. So your tints have to be much more opaque to change the value of the color. A glaze I would go through first and kind of get everything all lubricated so that the paint will slide around. But since I'm doing a tint, I actually want it to be more dry. Because if it's more dry, it's going to stick a little bit better to the paint layer underneath it. And that way, it'll actually change the values a little bit more. So I have a light spot right here, which I'm going to keep. So the darker that I want this to go, the thicker I apply the tint. And since this liquid dries so quickly, I'm actually able to paint over it in a matter of hours. So I could probably just go on to another section and come back and then actually paint another layer on top of this. Here we go. And kind of move up a little bit. I'm seeing this section needs come down quite a bit. I'm trying to keep this as loose as I can. So I decided when I was doing this portrait for Brian Sims, I was going to place him in the Capitol building of Pennsylvania. So he's a politician from Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Brian Sims, I suggest you look him up because he is a very exciting young politician. Now, what I'm using as my base here is my tint is just some ivory black, some burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and some raw sienna. And just kind of putting that into the places that need to be darkened up a bit. Because this is a portrait of Brian Sims and not a portrait of the courthouse of Pennsylvania, I'm really wanting this to just fall into the background and let Brian shine. Which he's pretty good about shining on his own, but as the artist, I need to reflect that in my painting of him. So the reason I wanted to do the veils on the background first and start with him and then end with him. If you noticed on day one, I actually started with his face and then went out from there. The reason for that is in portraiture, you really want to start on the most difficult parts with the most contrast and the most definition, and then end with the most difficult part as well. So I'm going to start with his face and then end with his face. Because really, when you're doing a portrait, the figure is the star. You don't want your background outshining, but you do want a nice supporting cast. So I'm trying to keep this video pretty short. So I think this background tinting is all I'm going to get to with this video. So I appreciate you spending this time with me. I don't know how much of this video is capturing. If you notice, I have a little injury. I had a busted eardrum that I had to have fixed, and I just feel really blessed that I'm in a situation to where I can have that fixed. There's so many people in America and around the world that would have an injury like mine and just be deaf for the rest of their lives. And I think that's a tragedy. I'm certainly glad that I can afford the health care that I need. And I think people like Brian Sims is gonna help get that available for more people. But baby steps. I think this is coming out pretty well, if I don't say so myself. I don't want any sharp lines. If I have sharp lines, it's gonna really bring this a little forward, and I want it to fall back as much as possible. And then I think by the time that I'm done applying everything, I can actually go through with like a soft brush and kind of blend this together a little bit, get rid of any brush strokes that may have come up. Because when you're tinting and veiling, you don't want your brush strokes to be too involved at that stage. You just want it to highlight the brush strokes that are already there. And because I'm using this this very muted tint, and I'm kind of using the same tint over everything in the background, it's going to help push it even further back. Because I want this background to not... Well, one, I don't want to have to spend all this time. It's a very complicated background. And since it's not going to be playing a major role in the story, I don't want there to be too much focus on it. And you have a building like the Pennsylvania Capitol, which was designed to stand out. Trying to get it to fall into the background is a challenge in itself. But if I am up for anything, it is a challenge. There we go. And there's kind of very intricate design work that I want to kind of allude to. Like, I don't want to be painting like individual little carved plaster or anything. But certainly I can kind of create brush strokes that will allude to the fact that there is plaster work up here. Without actually having to paint it in. Because as much as you can allude to without actually having to paint it, the better. Alright, I'm going to test this out. That looks pretty good for this next step. So I am going to take my little gentle blending brush, and then I have just kind of just quick little, just no pressure at all. I'm just blending out some of that brushwork so that it just falls away. No pressure, kind of going in the direction so I'm going in the direction of my original brush strokes, the ones on my original layer. That way my veil will fall into those little grooves of those brush strokes, and they kind of disappear. So I kind of lose all those little edges. Now that guy I want to be a little careful of. I really like that little shape I created there. I'm going to try to keep that. Alright. So I got a nice darkness. I got a couple of light points. Now I think what I want to do is I'm going to bring some of this light in from the top. So I'm adding some ceruleum and titanium white, and then a touch of that ivory black mixture we had made. And I am just gonna bring in the sunshine. I want there to be light coming from here. Leading towards our figure. And clean off my brush and then just add some liquid to that and then kind of blend in these little areas that I created. And it's very gentle, and I want this to be subtle. I don't want the audience or the viewer to feel like I'm manipulating them into admiring this great man. I just want them to be manipulated into admiring this great man. All right, very subtle yet effective. Alright, you guys, I think that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more of my work with this portrait and others. So subscribe, hit like, leave a comment. Thank you.